and welcome to the AzureWell podcast. Today we're going to be talking about men's health, and with me is Dr. Alphonzo Monzo. He's a biblical naturopath doctor, and men's health is very important. And I think you've prepared a good talk for us today with some illustrations to help us understand more about that. So welcome, Dr. Monzo.
Well, thank you for having me again. And yeah, this should be a good one. It was funny when I was first trying to find some images for the PowerPoint. I kept running across all kinds of different things on Men's Health Month. And everyone has a different opinion on what month that is of the year. I was like, I guess it can be whatever month you want it to be.
Well, when you're a man and you have a health issue that you're concerned about, it really doesn't matter what month it is in the year. It's important to be healthy. And so whenever somebody listens to this podcast, whether it's in a health month that goes along or not, hope they'll get a blessing from it and learn something that will help them.
That's right. So I'm going to bring up the PowerPoint here. And so you're going to see men's health, vitality in life. Now, this is an interesting topic because it's going to cover a few things that we have actually covered in the past. We did a men's and women's health once. I don't remember when that was. I think it was like the 4th or 5th podcast we ever did. I don't know exactly. And then we also did one on cardiovascular, and you're going to see why that's important in a minute. But men's health. And we're going to give you two kind of like different perspectives here that we'll get into in a minute. One kind of more from men and one from the actual medical community. So here's going to be our breakdown of what we're going to cover: the basics of men's health, causal issues to unhealthy men, lifestyle tips for health, and then, of course, what supplementation you can do for men's health. So this might sound familiar, just like we covered once before. This could be a very huge topic because it covers the reproductive system, but it also covers the endocrine system. And then there's all these other systems that are interrelated, because not all health problems for men are reproduction. Some are cardiovascular and mental, and that is mental wellness, which could be mental, emotional, and brain diseases. So for those who don't remember, the reproductive system is a one of the 12 systems of the body. It's mainly made up of the genitourinary system and all the organs that make up the sexual reproduction. But it's also made up of a bunch of non-living substances, such as fluids, hormones, pheromones, even neurotransmitters, and all of these kind of make up the reproductive system. And we're talking about that because this is going to make up a bulk of the things that most men are going to be concerned about. Although there are many other systems we're going to talk about in this presentation. So here's the basics still of men's health. The top in the blue is kind of more of men's perspective, I think. I think when most men think about health, they're thinking about muscle and energy and strength, vitality. They're thinking about their hormones, such as testosterone balance, their prostate, and probably sexual issues. And they probably don't really concern themselves with too much else. At least my perspective with most men. They're usually not the first people in the office to get help. And usually when they do come in, there's someone along their side that either brought them in or wanted to tag along. So, but according to the medical community, these are the top diseases that men get. Well, it's no surprise that heart disease and cancer, those are the top two leading causes of death by disease in the United States. They're actually not the leading cause of death in the United States. We'll get to that. But heart disease, which covers all the different issues you can get with a heart, and cholesterol, and sometimes strokes. Although not all strokes are cardiovascular related, but a lot. And then cancer, where with men, the biggest one is prostate cancer, of course. And number 2 and number 3 are lung cancer and colon cancer for men. And then you have diabetes. Probably has something to do with diet. And then you have mental health. And for most men, the things that are most common are the depression and things like Alzheimer's. I think Parkinson's is probably up there. And once in a while, you'll see ALS. That's not a common disease, but most of the time, I think when I see ALS, it's usually been men. And that is another neurological type disease. And then you have liver disease. I don't know, is that due to drinking? Maybe. I think men like to drink, but that could just be a guess. It might just have something to do with the society today. Our environment is extremely toxic, so who does not have liver problems now? Almost nobody. And then COPD. So those are probably the top concerns. So
And
when we
that's
start
interesting.
looking, go ahead.
It's interesting that you did designate the ones that men think their problem is versus maybe what other underlying problems there really are. Because when you don't really want to admit that there might be something out of your control or that you feel it's out of your control, because with muscle, you can measure that, but some of these other things, ah, it's kind of like that hidden thing that sneaks up on you. And so you may be worried about your muscle and making sure you've got plenty of that, not knowing that these other issues are there just, waiting for your weak moment.
That's right. A lot of these things could be quite quiet. And you probably learned this too yourself with the
Mm-hmm.
cancer
That's right.
situation. How long was that going on before you even realized there was a problem?
You feel like, well, I think I'm just tired. I'm sure it's nothing. But then surprise.
That's right. So when we get into the causes and more of lifestyles, we're going to break down a lot more of different things for each one of these. And obviously, we can't spend hours on each one of these topics, or we'd be here all night.
Hmm.
Each one of these could probably be its own podcast. So, of course, the causes of men's health issues. And I'm sure a few of these on the list are getting redundant, and they should be, because we are trying to teach you holistic health principles. And so, number one on the list, nutritional deficiencies. It affects everything. It's a big issue these days. So, a proper diet, making sure we're getting plenty of minerals and fats. That's what men are going to need. They're going to need plenty of protein too. And usually, if you're eating the right stuff, you're going to be getting the minerals and the fats and the proteins. But that's a big thing because a lot of these issues are going to be directly related to either the lack of minerals or essential fatty acids, which we're going to look at. And then we have toxins and environmental. Well, I think everyone knows now about heavy metal toxins, especially getting into the brain. So there's a lot of talk about what is Alzheimer's and some of these other diseases. Are they related to toxins getting into the brain? We also know now that there's a problem with plastics. They sometimes refer to that as forever chemicals. And some of the latest studies out there are talking about how many plastic toxins they're now finding in the testicles of men. So that's a scary thing because now how is that affecting reproduction and the ability to have children? Not good. And there are there's at least one company out there so far that I've seen that is actually making an enzyme to break down forever chemicals and plastics. So I think this might be something that Azure needs to look into and see if we don't want to come out with a formula like that too, because I think that is going to be a big thing. Because it's been labeled forever toxins, and people have this idea that, oh, once you get them in your body, they're there forever and you can't get them out. Well, we're finding out that that's not true. Even naturally occurring in the earth, we're finding out nature seems to have its way, the way the creator created things to be resistant. So we have all this toxic stuff in the seas, and now we're finding out they're finding these natural enzymes and bacterias are now being accumulated in the water and is starting to clean up our water systems. So isn't it interesting how nature seems to find a way to fix some of its problems? So maybe these things are not forever chemicals and there actually are ways to get them out. But it's something to definitely be thinking about, these plastics and heavy metals and chemicals. Mental emotional stress. Well, men don't have that. At least they don't think they do.
That's right.
They probably, quite honestly, men know they do. They're just not going to admit it. So we're never going to admit it, but we know the mental emotional stress is there. Probably a lot of, and typically it's the depression and probably shame that gets men the most because of competition and providing and all the stuff that men deal with. That's probably the stuff they deal with the most. And so, you're going to have financial stress and job, work, all those type of family, and those things start to wear you down. And if you don't find something to do with that mental stress, it's going to start causing effects, physical, chemical effects on the body. Next is moving. We have a very sedentary lifestyle today in America where people just don't move enough. I think most people are either working at their desk or they're at work and they're not moving a whole lot. So the lack of movement always leads to health problems. Movement is life. And there's so many systems in the body that require movement, especially the lymph system. So if we're not moving, we're not getting these toxins out of the body, and then they're going to build up. And a slide before here was talking about one of the big things was the cardiovascular system, heart diseases for men. Well, that's a circulation thing. And of course, if we're not moving much, then not much in the body is going to move. So we have to make sure that we're moving. Here's another one. Maybe we haven't seen this one too much. Bad information, bad medicine. We're going to talk about the latest Johns Hopkins and Harvard study, which was done in 2021. It's starting to make some waves around because, most of the time these studies get published or they're finished. And guess what? No one comes knocking at your door to tell you these studies are done. Unless you have someone out there who's looking for them and finds them and then starts sharing it online, you usually don't find out anything about most studies out there. So we're going to find out what that study showed. And then we have energy circulation and function. And wherever the energy circulates, function. I don't think I really show too many pathways or anything in this PowerPoint, but we will probably refer you back to some of the other ones. I'll try to remember to say that when we get to it. So one more slide here on causes of men's health, and that is we really want to hammer this down, the difference between the modern medicine, the allopathic approach, and natural healthcare approach. So in modern medicine, we replace hormones. In natural health, we want to support your hormones and get your body to make its own. And that way, if it's too high or too low, we fix it. We don't want to substitute and force the body in a specific direction with just replacing the hormones, because then, there's a feedback loop. And if you're just giving the person testosterone, the body's feedback system realizes you're already getting testosterone, so it stops producing it. And then you get into this cycle of you become dependent on the replacement hormones instead of supporting the body to the point to where the body is making its proper amount again. The second one there is the use of synthetic substances versus using whole food minerals and nutrients and vitamins and things like that. The third one I kind of mentioned already. It's the idea of forcing the body in a specific direction. Usually, for the next one down, symptom management. So we want to take away your symptoms because that's really all they're focused on. So we're going to force the body in a specific direction that minimizes the symptoms, but the cause is still there. So on our side, we're here to encourage the body to work the way the creator created it and to get to the root cause and therefore build vitality in the body and not just manipulate symptoms and hopefully you feel better as long as you're on the drugs. Then when the drugs wear off, your problems come back. We don't want that. So this is the mind shift here that everyone needs to make, understanding the difference between the allopathic approach and the natural health care. And I think people really need to start making this shift because guess who is in charge of the Department of Health and Human Services? That's right, it's Kennedy. And by the way, I got to meet Kennedy's right-hand man.
Oh, did you?
Yes, when I was in Arizona. His name is Jeff Zink. You're going to be hearing his name more. You're going to, pretty soon, he's probably going to be having his confirmation hearings. But he happened to be in the area when I was down there to teach the class, and he stopped in with his wife.
Did he?
And they interviewed me for about a half hour, and then they sat around my class for about an hour. They loved it. And I can see why they picked the guy. He really knows what he's doing. He's been in health for a long time, mainly working with professional athletes, but it's basically like talking to Kennedy almost.
Okay.
It was a lot of fun. So I absolutely have a direct connection now.
Nice.
He
Nice.
gave me a couple of insights of what they're planning, and I can say it's good. It's good.
Hopefully, it's trying to build vitality
That's right.
for
That's
men
right.
and everyone. That would be a good plan.
So I think you're going to be seeing a lot of this type of idea where you're going to start learning the difference between these two things. We're looking forward to it. All right. Well, lifestyle tips. Of course, if nutritional deficiencies are one of the number one causes to health issues, then what should we do as a lifestyle change? Well, get your 90 essential nutrients. Specifically for men, things like the copper, the manganese, really important. Omega oils, the 369, mainly the threes. Saturated fats from clean animals are very important. And if you remembered when we talked about the heart health, we talked about heart disease was mainly copper and your B vitamins, your omega 3s, and selenium. So we start seeing these common themes with different systems in the body. Mental health for the brain, again, copper, B vitamins, and omega 3s. We're starting to see some correlations here for men, aren't we? Hormones. Well, all of your hormones in the body are actually made up of cholesterol, and so is the 80% of the brain. So low cholesterol is not healthy, but it sure does sell drugs. So something to think about when we start looking at unhealthy levels of cholesterol. Well, cholesterol is a good thing, and the body makes it for a reason. So instead of calling cholesterol bad, we should be looking at why is your body making too much cholesterol? There's a reason, right? Usually it's some type of inflammation or other problem that the cholesterol is there to patch up things, especially in the cardiovascular system, to patch up things and make things smoothed out so that you don't have weak, brittle veins and arteries. And that's very important. So the idea of let's just get rid of the cholesterol is really the band-aid again. It's going after the symptom and not the cause. And at the same time, if you remember, a pharmaceutical drug is going to force the body. So now if we start forcing the body to just get rid of cholesterol, the body's not just going to naturally get rid of cholesterol that's not supposed to be there. It's being forced to just get rid of all of it. So you greatly lower your cholesterol, and then what's going to happen? You're going to start having problems with the brain, and you're going to start having problems with cholesterol. And there are actually charts out there that show the the bar graph of Parkinson's disease. And they show when it was almost nothing and how it got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And that bar graph is the same bar graph as statin drugs when they started using cholesterol drugs. So a lot of doctors, like myself and Dr. Glidden and others, really think that a lot of the Alzheimer's disease is a allopathic medical induced disease because of how they have forced the body in the wrong direction for too long. Liver cancer, COPD. Man, that was a tongue twister there. The body needs multiple nutrients to main function. This is where we're going to get in. There's not just one nutritional deficiency for each one of these. With the liver, you also get into the idea of you needing to be able to detox and get those things out. Cancer is very complicated. It requires all kinds of things because you're talking about healthy cells. Do healthy cells need? Well, they need everything, right? There it goes. Well, maybe. It's not moving. There it goes. Technical difficulties. Toxins and environmental metals and chemicals and plastics. Okay, well, what are we going to do about this one? And I give a little bit more information on all of these. So the healthy lifestyle tip is on the bottom, but to better understand, I kind of talked about some of this already. I knew it was somewhere. I'm always ahead of myself sometimes on PowerPoints. We didn't mention the unbound iron. We don't want to forget about the unbound iron and how that affects the brain. And a lot of Alzheimer's there's research papers out there now saying that the unbound iron is directly related to Alzheimer's and actually the lack of copper. Depression, I talked about the plastics now being found in the testicles. So, from a naturopathic perspective, toxins are either the number one or number two causal factor of all diseases after deficiencies. Very interesting. So, your top two things, deficiencies and toxins. So, what would be a healthy lifestyle? Well, one, to avoid the toxins as best as you can. That's kind of not possible right now. So, you do your best. It's not like you're going to avoid every single toxin, so don't stress yourself out more trying to be too extreme. But there's a lot you can do. Simple things like, what are you putting on your body every day? What type of soaps are you using? What type of shampoos? What types of deodorants? These are things that you can that are within your grasp of being able to make changes in your own lifestyle to avoid those things. They're not something that's being subjugated onto you where you can't change it. What you're eating and consuming is another one. You get to make those choices. No one's forcing you to eat something. So, in the areas where we can make these changes, we really need to do that. So, we should be looking at, deodorants that don't have heavy metals and aluminum and all these toxic chemicals. We should be looking at health products like soaps and shampoos and shaving cream and all those type of things that are natural based as much as possible, that has the least amount of toxins, because whatever you put on your skin is going to be absorbed in the body. Okay, the skin is the largest organ in the body and it absorbs everything you put on it. So the more we can avoid those things, how about drinking out of I have a glass bottle here. So instead of drinking out of plastic bottles or some type of cheap metal, there's some better metals out there, but some of the bottles are really cheap metals. You don't want to be drinking out of that because you're going to be picking up some toxins.
Mm.
Make sure your body is detoxing. How do you know? Well, very simple. Are your bowels moving? Right? Are we having healthy bowel movements every day? They say you should have one bowel movement for every normal size meal, an actual real meal. So if you're just snacking all day, you're probably not going to be going as much. But if you're having 3 full meals, really we should be going 3 times. Now, most people are lucky if they go once or twice a day. And then there's other people that don't even go once a day. If you're not going once a day, you are actually really constipated. And that stuff is backing up. And what happens is there's a direct connection between the large intestine, which is the colon, the very end of the colon, and circulation. And if toxins are sitting there too long, they have the tendency to be reabsorbed through the gut lining back into the bloodstream and then back into the flow of the blood in the body. And you don't want that. So you want your bowel movements eliminating daily. You want to make sure you're sweating. That's the way you get toxins out. The lymph is flowing. For lymph flow, you need movement and then proper urination, because urination is another way you eliminate stuff out of the body. So if those things aren't moving or going daily, you should start thinking about what are some things I can do to get those things moving. And AzureWell has plenty of supplements and ideas on that stuff. And we've covered some of these things in other topics like digestive health and stuff like that. All right, this has 2 on here. Mental emotional stress, very simple. Find things to do that you love to reduce your stress. If it's sports, it's sports. If it's something else, there can be all kinds of things. Getting out in nature, hiking, climbing. Find something you like to do. And that's why I kind of put these 2 things together, the mental emotional stress and movement lifestyle, because you find out a lot of exercise. Specifically, I think it's true for both sexes, but for men, we tend to be very physical. Exercise just seems to be a great way to reduce stress. Mm-hmm. So it makes sense that these 2 things go together. but supplement to boost your adrenal function because the adrenals are what takes the majority of your stress from life, all that cortisol. So finding ways to support the adrenal glands and take the stress off. And then, of course, meditation on God's word and renewing your mind helps bring you back to focus and focus on the things that are really important instead of all the things that are out here. Movement, like I said, exercise. This helps your detox pathways, right? It helps get you sweating, the lymph moving, and so the detox pathways open up and you start getting things out. Also helps to reduce stress. It helps the physical fitness and strength. So simple things, walking, sports, mild cardiovascular exercise, strength training, but do not work yourself out. You know, that old word, workout. Well, workout really isn't a good idea. You don't want to work yourself out. You just want nice exercise.
Well, the thing about this that is interesting to me is that the adrenal function and the adrenaline and the cortisol, it's my understanding that when you are under a lot of stress and your body produces those hormones, that is something that makes it so that you accumulate fat around your organs. And I understand that that is worse to have fat around your organs versus the kind of floppy fat that, just hangs on you. The stuff around your organs is actually worse for your cardiovascular. And yet movement doesn't seem to get rid of belly fat, abdominal fat. I've heard people complain that, I just can't get rid of this pot. And if it really is related to stress and the stress hormones more
Hmm.
than your physical activity, then that makes it sound like, well, the answer to that pot must be more getting your stress hormones under control.
Yeah, and that also requires proper nutrition, right? So I think, yeah, we did one on weight and
Okay, good.
physical fitness, and we were talking in that one about how uh, a lot of times the weight issues are due to mineral deficiencies and not having the proper minerals. And so your body can't lose the weight because it's actually starving, right? And then what happens is people fill themselves with fake foods. They have no nutritional value, and the body just wants more and more food. And so most people go to the opposite mistake of, well, if I just exercise enough, this is going to come off. Well, if the problem is really two things, like you just mentioned, one, a lot of mental emotional stress and you just taxed your adrenals out, and then other, you have mineral deficiencies, which they kind of go hand in hand because if you didn't have mineral deficiencies, your adrenals would probably be able to keep up.
Hmm.
Well, you can work out all you want, but that's not going to really change anything. That's not going to put the minerals and the nutritional deficiencies back into the body. In fact, you might just sweat more out. So yeah, understanding the right way to do this stuff. And I think that's why more and more people are finding out you don't really want to work yourself out and we don't want to do these crazy cardiovascular exercises, very mild ones, because it seems that the extreme cardiovascular and extreme sports really don't help with overall health. People used to think that was true, but we don't see that. I mean, you see
Because that's
marathon
causing us,
runners all the time having all kinds of health issues.
because it causes a lot of stress to the body. The body has to deal with that stress. It's pumping out different hormones. And if it doesn't have the nutrition and the minerals to handle that stress, then it's actually worse for it to do that. Wow.
And it's also kind of true for the, strength training is fine, but when you start getting into people get into bodybuilding, a lot of the bodybuilding ideas are really not healthy. And you just watch these guys when they get so big they can barely even reach anything. And it's like, well, you've lost your flexibility. And a lot of times their health really isn't that good. Not to mention that a lot of them can't really get that big without, taking something.
And all of the unhealthful things that people that do those contests have to do to try to manipulate the body to be something that it wasn't intended to just for a contest. And yeah, hopefully we're all about true health, being robust, being productive, and these contests to see, who can look a certain way that's unnatural. Hopefully we're just using our strength and talents for something productive.
That's right. Let's see here. Okay, bad information. And I kind of have it up here. I was going to show, I might still show one thing here. So I put here the latest Harvard. It actually was Johns Hopkins and Harvard. So in 2016, there was a study. And of course, they were looking that the medical field was the third leading cause of death in America. And about 250,000 Americans every year die from medication and surgical errors. Well, what happened is there was a newer study, and let's see, can I just it for a minute? And now you see this article, right? It's up here. Burden of serious harm from diagnostic error in the United States. This was 2021. Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. When you go down later, you'll see there were some people with Harvard too. So what they found out was that all these numbers we've had in past years only was really looking at the number of people who die due to medical error in surgery and medical error in drugs. But we really didn't have any good statistics on medical error as far as misdiagnosing. So they did a study on that, and of course, their conclusion was almost 800,000 Americans become permanently disabled or die annually because of misdiagnosis. And so there was a great video that came out that someone who was explaining this. I'm not a huge fan of this guy. I don't know who this guy really is, other than I saw this one study, doctors kill more than diseases. And when they added in the number of misdiagnosed plus deaths due to doctor error in surgery and drugs, the number is almost 1.1 million Americans every year dying by the allopathic medical community. Now, here is cancer and heart disease in 2021. So, if you took the top two causes of death by disease in our country and added them up, it almost equals the same as what the doctors are killing every year. So, really, medical mistakes plus misdiagnosis is the number one cause of death in our country right now. And that was back in 2021, before turbo cancers really was a thing. And the turbo cancers are caused by these guys. So really makes you wonder, once you start seeing these things, it's like when the disease is worse than the cause, then, that's a problem. Or did I say that right? You know what I meant. When the cure is worse than the disease.
There you go.
That's what I was trying to say. And I think I just realized that I actually have that slide on the next. Yeah, I didn't need to do all that, but I didn't think that was in the PowerPoint. I actually thought I forgot to do that. Who knew? So bad information. We have to really understand this stuff. That is why we have a whole Make America Healthy Again movement, because people are realizing this idea that, hey, the medical community, it's a frightening thing to think of, that the very people you're going to for your health could be killing more people than the diseases. And that is not a good sign. That means something is definitely wrong. The last one was energy circulation and function. Wherever energy flows, all functions flow. So we did a podcast on cardiovascular, and we did one on brain and eyes. Most of the pathways we covered in those two podcasts, if you go back, have a lot to do with men's health. Most of all the things we've mentioned today would basically be back to those two podcasts. When you think of the reproductive system and the brain, the liver, eyes, all that was basically covered under the brain and eyes podcast with the blood messenger pathway and the head and vision messenger pathway, because those pathways go through the reproductive system. And then when you get to the cardiovascular system, there was two pathways. One was heart messenger pathway, and one was sound and assimilation messenger pathway. That will cover a majority of your cardiovascular issues, reproductive issues, digestive issues, all kinds of things like that. So go review those ones and you'll get a very good idea of pathways and stuff that you can do for men's health. We just covered that. One more tip on healthy lifestyle tips. Balance your hormones. So there is a another article that's been released by AzureWell. Is that on the blog? I
Should
always
be.
forget where it is. Yeah, on the blog. All about testosterone. So I highly recommend you go and read that. It's really good. So a little bit of a summary. Testosterone is the powerhouse hormone for men. Basically, it's the number one hormone that is known for men. Men have all hormones just like women. Women have testosterone too, but it's just the number one hormone for men is testosterone, and it's going to be higher in men than women, obviously. And too much estrogen is basically the kryptonite for men, especially when you get into the pseudo estrogens and junk estrogens. They have a lot of different names, but they tend to lower your testosterone. And a lot of those things come from the plastics and stuff today, right? They're pseudoestrogens. They mimic estrogen, even though they aren't really estrogen. So concerning, considering they're finding plastics building up in the testicles of men. And of course, if it's in men, it's also in women. But think about what that's doing to our hormones. So it says, this was from the article. So it says you can find over 2,000 studies on PubMed about testosterone that show undeniable connection between testosterone and overall health. Low testosterone is associated with an increased risk of heart disease, osteoporosis, muscle loss, chronic inflammation, and the list goes on. Besides all of these health concerns, low testosterone can rob you of your drive and vitality, leading to feelings of depression, diminished sexual desire, and the loss of the spark that makes you feel alive. Isn't that interesting? A lot of diseases that men have can be linked to testosterone. Isn't that interesting? Science here is abundantly clear. Low testosterone isn't just about energy and mood, it's connected with a whole range of health risks as men age, and the aging begins in their 30s. There's one problem here. What is the medical community going to try to do for you if your testosterone is low? Give you a replacement hormone. Does that work the same way in the body as the body making its own testosterone? No, it doesn't. So you notice they haven't been able to lower these risks because they're not really allowing the body to make its own testosterone. They're substituting it for you, and it just doesn't work. Furthermore, by age 30, testosterone levels start to decline at a rate of 1% per year. However, only 2% of your total testosterone is free testosterone, which is the bioavailable form that body can actually use. Think about that. Only 2% of your total testosterone. Now, what does that mean for the medical studies or medical testing where they test your hormones? Are they actually even getting to the real cause? Well, not if they're not testing your free testosterone along with your testosterone, because that's the one we really want to know about. And of course, this one declines faster. So this is why we need to find good ways to supplement and do other things for that, which is what we're going to talk about. I'm going to get a drink of water. So basic nutrition, nutritional support for men. These are your absolute basics. If you want your 90 essential, we're right here. These three products right here. Now, fulvic humeric are minerals, but we also have trace replace ionic minerals. So both of these would give you your minerals, really. It's really hard to say one one's better. This one has a lot more functions other than just replacing your minerals. This one's a nice one that's really good for putting in your water to replace minerals in your water and you drink it. But basically, there's your 90 essential nutrients, the whole food multi, Alaskan cod liver oil, and one of the minerals. And that's going to give you your 90 essential nutrients. On top of that, we were talking about how important copper is for men's health, and of course, the adrenal food for that adrenal stress reduction. So there's your basic support for men. How about hormone balance for men? Well, we got 3 products from Azure here: the testosterone support for men, prostate support, and men's pro-adaptogen. Supports free testosterone levels for male health. What do you know? Andropause. So, men have these system issues too. And interesting, that kind of sounds like adrenal almost.
It does.
So this one's going to support libido, duration, satisfaction. Man, that was a hard one for me to say right now. Performance, strength, obviously prostate support, like it sounds. Broad spectrum, a bunch of different herbals. There's saw palmetto in there. 6 other botanical superfoods that really support the prostate function, and of course, healthy urinary function, which is going to be important for men, especially as you get older. You want to keep that flow correct. And then, of course, this is the one that all the men are probably really wanting to get, and that's the testosterone support for men. And this one promotes healthy testosterone levels. So this is not giving you testosterone. This is giving you herbals to help your body produce testosterone on its own. And the same thing with this one over here, adaptogens. The great thing with adaptogen, again, is it helps your body to adapt. So that means it's not forcing your body in one direction or the other. If something's too high, it helps bring it down. If it's too low, it helps bring it up. That's what's really amazing about these superfoods that our creator created and put in the environment. Our body knows exactly how to work along with them and how to fix the problem, because it's the body that knows how to heal, and the body is going to use these ingredients to heal itself. So besides testosterone levels, this product is also going to support men's sexual vitality, sexual desire, and it's going to help common symptoms related to male andropause. So, depression and just low drive and vitality, all those things are going to become common when your testosterone levels start to drop. Maybe even getting a little bit more irritated and agitated and grumpy. Get some good testosterone go. Healthy support for men. This is a little bit different, but these are a few other things that men can do. So we have the men's and women's estrogen balance. And here we go again. This is having to do with healthy estrogen metabolism, right? We don't want junk estrogen or estrogen to get too high because it affects your other hormones. So this is a good formula for both men and women, and it's true for women too. When estrogen's out of balance, it throws out your progesterone and your other things. So both men and women have a problem today because of the junk or pseudoestrogens in the environment causing problems with the hormones. So this has DIM in it, which has been known for a long time to really help balance out that junk estrogen. And that's what we need. Some people call it this, hydroxyestrogen. DHEA from wild yam. So this is one of the precursors to a lot of your hormones. So your body uses DHEA to make the majority of your hormones. So it makes sense that we would help the body supply more DHEA, but we don't want it synthetically, and we don't really necessarily even want to take it from animals because they're not quite the same as us. So this form of DHEA comes from the wild yam. So it's going to produce or provide support in aging, optimal hormone support, and mood stabilization, emotional welfare. Why? Because a lot of times our mental emotional states are based on hormones. Then you have beef liver supplements. I think beef liver is a great one for the men. It's really rich source of your B vitamins, especially B12, choline, folate, that's B9. Retinol's in there, copper, iron, and this is your bioavailable form of iron, what we might call heme, and other trace minerals. So that covers a lot of those things. Selenium is going to be in here. We were talking about selenium for men. So a lot of things are going to be in your beef liver. Also supports metabolic functions. It aids in liver detoxification and healthy immune and energy production. So that's a great product for men. And I don't think you'll become like Liver King That guy's kind of crazy. I think he had to admit that he was using steroids. It wasn't the beef liver that made him look like Hulk Hogan.
Mhm.
One more category. We have endocrine and structural support for men. And two really powerhouses for the endocrine system, but they're also really good for cleansing the body, is Thyroid Nourish and Thyroid Cleanse. So Thyroid Nourish is a little bit more for balancing thyroid function and other hormones. It has maca in there. That's really a great one for hormones. The kelp, the turkey tail. So detoxification and vitality. So it does support some detoxification in there just because of the combination of herbals. But the one that helps even more is Thyroid Cleanse. So that's a little bit more specific for cleansing and detoxifying pathways. So supporting those. It also provides some hormone support because it has the kelp in there and support again. There's that word, xenoestrogen. So that's another word for fake estrogen. And that's the type of estrogens people are getting from plastics and junk like that from our environment. It acts like estrogen, but it's not. And glucosamine sulfate. It comes from non GMO corn and not from shellfish. This is unique. You don't find many companies that have a glucosamine that does not come from shellfish. And of course, we don't want anything unclean, not to mention, so many people have shellfish allergies, probably because it's full of poisons. But why would you want to take something like that that could cause problems for you? So, this is non GMO corn based, and glucosamine is really good for the ligaments and the joints, for cartilage, and lubricating the joints. So this is something I think a lot of men need since men are pretty active. And there you go. Those are the supplements AzureWell has for men's health. So I'm just going to end the slide here unless you wanted to look at something else on the slides.
No, I think we're good. I was hoping that you would share with men some advice.
Yes.
And the advice, I guess you kind of alluded to it at the very beginning when you said that most men, when they come for help, they have someone that is kind of bringing them or someone that wants to come with them.
Yes.
I think people in general, but maybe men in particular, don't want to admit when something is wrong and that they actually need help from someone else. So actually going to a practitioner might be difficult for them. Just admitting that there's a problem is something they just don't want to do. And so delaying getting help, much less trying to head off something that they just don't want to have a problem with. So the whole preventive thing, well, I'm going to take these supplements from AzureWell, as a preventive. Well, are you sick? Well, no, I'm not sick yet, but I don't want to get sick. So
Yes.
there's this whole kind of mental, emotional, social thing around men's health. Men don't want to be seen as weak. They want to be in charge. They want to be in control. They don't want their body to go do something on them that they weren't expecting. They want to be able to build their body like they build the rest of their lives. So, what advice would you have for men who either aren't sick yet or think that they might be and they're just at the beginning of this? It's not full blown, oh yeah, they're sick with this and we need to help them, and they're kind of already getting the help they need. What advice would you have for people that aren't sick yet or think they might be? What do they do? Where do they start in order to make sure that they don't need a lot of help, that they can get it in the beginning?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing is just being humble and admitting, hey, there might be something going on. Because in reality, what you just said was 100%. But also, it can turn into an issue where it actually becomes a little bit selfish, because in reality is if you don't take care of yourself, eventually it's going to affect everyone around you. So it's actually going to affect your loved ones if you don't take care of yourself, because when the inedible happens and something breaks down, you could find yourself in a really bad situation, and it could cost a lot of money, which then puts everyone else around you into a lot of stress and hardship. So I think the first thing is just being humble and realizing we're all human. You're going to have problems. And it's much better to cut it off as soon as possible. So even starting with, the 90 essential nutrients and then figuring out, hey, do I need to see someone like myself or someone else in the natural health field to say, hey, maybe I need to get another perspective here. Maybe I should listen to my wife and go in and just see what they have to say. Because guess what? Most men out there, we can probably find a problem. And it might not be a full blown problem yet, but there's no doubt you probably have things going on in your body that is not good. And, if we can start catching it early and preventive, then we're going to stop things before they develop. So before developing diabetes or heart disease or a cancer or something, why don't we get the body healthy and in a proper place so that you don't have to worry about those things? Yeah. But I think a lot of it just comes down to the ego and just there's nothing wrong with seeking help.
And
But yeah,
even
this,
seeking help before you need it, maybe,
yep,
even
yep.
just
Even
someone to
preventive,
help you stay balanced.
just to stay
Because if
balanced.
you can maintain that balance before it gets out of balance, so just going to someone for that kind of help doesn't mean you're sick yet. It just means that you want to be balanced.
And you can save a lot of money because it costs way more to fix a problem than prevent a problem,
Right.
right?
Right.
But yeah, this is a common denominator, and it's not even clients, but you also see it in training. When we do health trainings and all the different classes I went to for my training, and when I have classes, 90% of the time it's women. And usually you have maybe one or two or three men that are in the class, and it's like, hey, where's all the other guys?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's usually the women who get it first.
Yeah. And we do have on our website, AzureLivingWell.com, we have a place where people can go to find a practitioner. And these are practitioners that are already familiar with AzureWell supplements. And then also at AzureLivingWell.com is where we have our blog, which, as you noted earlier in the podcast, we have the article about testosterone and, of course, other resources for people to get to there. So, yeah, we have a community of supportive people that are just here to help everyone live their best. And whether you're already sick or not sick yet, or somewhere that you don't know in between there, yeah, hopefully getting that balance, getting that nutrition, getting the support will help a lot.
Absolutely.
Well, good. That's very helpful. Thank you, Dr. Monzo. It's been good to have
Welcome.
you on the program again, and we'll do this again sometime. It's been very good.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, everyone.